Body Dysmorphic Disorder, or otherwise known as BDD, is an extremely real thing. And it seems to be getting even more exacerbated in the world that we live in today. You know, you're too fat, you're too ugly, you're not skinny enough, you're not tall enough, you're not short enough, your hair is ugly. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to the Positivity Experience. Let's talk about BDD. Check it out. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It is your girl, Lori. I am so excited that you're here. I love you being here. I love you guys so much. I appreciate you. It is fall time. It is finally starting to feel like fall. Sweatshirts, hoodies, campfires. That is the build me the mountains and tell me go there and the mountains are calling and I will go. So this is one of my favorite kinds of weather. It's also very cozy. I love that. If in fact you are struggling with certain levels about your body, I'm going to give you a trigger warning now. Would I love for you to stay around? Yes. But I also want you to be mindful. This can be very triggering and sometimes it needs to be in order for you to work through it. But if you feel as though it's going to be too much, because we are going to be talking about BDD, Body Dysmorphic Disorder, and it can be triggering, but it is something that you want to at least try to listen to if you can. But if it does become problematic, please feel free to save it to later, anything like that. And go over to the Patreon after here. If you're a Patreon subscriber, make sure that you download the worksheet. It tells you how it's kind of presenting for you and why, like where that's looking and kind of like how we want to like start to address it. So if that's your jam, you can also follow me over at Patreon at patreon.com/the positivity experience. Or you can just go anywhere that you're getting this podcast today into the description. There's a clickable link and it'll take you right there. I am all about easy. So I want to talk to you a lot about this BDD. It is something that I will tell you, I think it was the chicken or the egg with me of either my binge eating disorder and my BDD. And I'm not sure which came first. Honestly, no, I think I am. I think this just came to me. I think it was the BDD first, but they weren't far apart. Okay. So we're going to talk a lot about sort of what that looks like and the complexities of it, because it's not usually a one and done. Usually you're going to need a whole team because you have to be consistent and it's very complex sometimes to basically diagnose. However, I do want to tell you, BDD is a mental health issue. It is a mental health disorder and it is rarely, if ever, a standalone issue. So you will see it a lot with insecurities of like low self-esteem. You will see it with anxiety. You will see it with depression. It's typically what we call a comorbidity. So comorbidity means there's like an adjunct to it, right? So like if you have that, you are definitely way more prone to this. And I need you to be extremely clear on that because I think very often people go, well, it's just my body. Yeah, but it's also your anxiety. It's also other things. So I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of like where does it come from? So there's something called biological factors, right? Now you're thinking biological genetically. Well, typically no, you're not going to have just a gene that's the BDD gene. There's not a gene when you're born that's like, well, they're going to hate their body. Like that's not it. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have other biological factors. If you're low in your serotonin, if we know that there's a chemical imbalance, if your neurotransmitters are imbalanced in your brain, yes, you can be very much more predisposed to having BDD or any other mental health issue. Okay, so it can definitely, especially if you have a hard time struggling with your mood regulation, stuff like that, because it kind of becomes a focal thing where you kind of start to use it, much like I did with my binge eating, as this control thing that you didn't like. It was self-sabotaging, but it was like your best friend. So it doesn't have to make sense to you, because some people will be like, well, if like, why would you do it? Well, because it's very comfortable. Very often in life, you don't have control over 99.9% of the things in your world anyway. So it's sometimes if you don't establish what a healthy coping strategy is, you're going to go to the things like eating disorder or seeing yourself from a whole different perspective. So biologically, yes, there are some factors there, but there's no such thing as a genetic component to BDD specifically, right? It's just, like I said, it's just a comorbidity. Now there's other psychological factors, which I just said. If you're struggling with low self-esteem, right? If you're studying with low self-esteem, perfectionism. Oh my God, perfectionism will sink you in a heartbeat. Perfectionism will give you this sense of thinking that you have to be this perfect size. Well, the reality is there is no perfect size and perfect standard to beauty. No, I know what you see on social media. Okay, I got it. But I want to go back in time for just a minute. I want to go back to Marilyn Monroe, and I want to go back to around that time, 50s, 60s. Go out and just look at some of these beautiful people of all genders, these beautiful people, and you're going to see Marilyn Monroe was not this size 2 skinny girl. She wasn't. I'm not shaming skinny people. I'm not. I'm saying she wasn't that person. She was beautiful, right? Like you look at her and you see she's beautiful. Well, she had some curves to her. By some people's beauty standards, they might have looked at her and said, well, she's a little on the heavy side. That's their perception. First of all, you have to understand, I know you've heard this saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but it is very true, right? If I go to a museum with you and I find this piece of art and I am like emotionally like crying and it's beautiful and you think this is ugly, well, that's fine, but it doesn't make it ugly to me. But that is going to come, and I use that piece of it, but pretend that those were people. That's going to come with your self-esteem. There is no fast fix to this BDD, anxiety, or depression. It's never going to be a fast fix. Ever, 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 never. But it is going to be you getting to the deeper roots of these things and then taking your medicine, doing the work to heal certain things, building your self-esteem. That's going to help. But the psychological factors, nonetheless, still play a very high part in it. Now, there's the socioculture factors, right? Now, that is this society's pressure to conform to these unrealistic beauty standards. They're unrealistic, and it's perpetuated by media. I did a short form video. They partnered with me, or I partnered with them, I guess, for this beauty filter. It was called the Bold Beauty Filter, or the Bold Glamour, or something like that, on TikTok. And it was setting very I looked fly, but it was very, very unrealistic expectations. And so these beauty standards by social media and things that you see in the news can be extremely problematic. So that's what a socioculture thing is, right? If you're constantly being exposed to these unrealistic ideas of beauty, and I want to talk to you about that because that's where I think people in my generation, back in my day, but in my generation, very Gen X, I'm 52 years old, grew up in the 70s and 80s. It was, yes, it's bad now because you have the social media, but it was bad then. It was like, it created literally their way of trying to fit you into this. You must be this size in order to be beautiful and accepted. Although it's very, very uncool, but people are treated very differently if they are heavier than if they're lighter. It's just unfortunate, but I'm going to keep it real with you. That does happen. That doesn't mean go do something crazy. It just means that those people are not your people. Right? Because there's always going to be somebody who thinks we're too something, too tall, too short, too white, too black, too ugly, too skinny, too fat. Like we're all going to be too something for somebody. Well, screw them because they're not your people. Okay. But I remember, and I forget, it might've been Special K now that I think about it. Cause I know Special K had their own stuff where they didn't want you to pinch more than an inch, unrealistic. And, but this one was a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. And I know you've heard that before. So now you have your parents shaming you. You have social media, or at the time TV. Nowadays we have social media shaming you. Well, if you eat those donuts, and it had like these big donuts on this lady's hips, and she's trying to walk through the turnstile of a train station, like in the city, and she couldn't get by. Like, oh my God, I'm so fat, I can't get by. And then literally the tagline was like, a moment on the lips, a lifetime on the hips. So now you're breeding unsafe and unhealthy versions of how you see food. So now you go, well, I really want that piece of chocolate cake. Then eat the chocolate cake. Don't eat it every day. Don't do that. I am a binge eater. Now, granted, she has not reared her ugly head in quite some time, but I work with her, right? And I work with a deeper rooted issue because there is still this level of lovely control that if I went down a binge, I would feel very much in control, And so you have to be mindful of those things. But if you think about it, think about how bad that is. When you're looking at using the word diet, unless you're using like Mediterranean diet, which is really a way of eating. I don't like the word diet. I don't like the idea of cutting out this and not having this. If I want my chocolate chip cookie with full sugar in it, I'm going to have it. Yes. If I eat it, do I think it's going to run to my hips? I used to. And honestly, as I get older, I do realize I could look at an ad for food and I realize, that's weird. My jeans are just a little bit tighter than they were before. That's okay. That just means that I lean into accepting my body. No, I get my Botox and my filler, but I don't have to have it. I get it because you know what? My injector's a friend of mine. She's a client of mine. Will I get it forever? Probably not. I mean, this is cute. It's been doing it for a couple years. It's fun. I like it. Oh my God, that's cool. It's a lot. It's a lot. Will I do it forever? Probably not. You know what I mean? So, I mean, never say never. It is what it is. But I don't do it because I have to have it. I actually do it because I enjoy it. If I was doing it because I had to have it, well, then that would be a whole different topic and I would have to stop that immediately. Now you have the environmental factors that can also lead into this. And that is experiences of bullying, teasing, and not just from people at school, not just friends. Sometimes it's your family member. Sometimes it's the teacher at school who's like, oh, well, you put on a little weight this summer, didn't you? What? I mean, yeah, because I'm like 12 and I'm eating like French fries and pizza and yeah, the good stuff, the greasy stuff. And now you made me feel like shit behind it. So you have to understand, just because you are trying to fit into a beauty standard doesn't mean it's your beauty standard. Oh my God, it's so important, because if you do not understand that, some people are just not going to be a size 2. Some people are just not going to be tall. Some people are not going to be fast. Like, it just is what it is. I could go to the tanning salon, and I did, which is why I had 5 or 6 skin cancers removed off of me. And I go every year. I could go every day in the summer, in the winter, and I would get tan. But I would never get tan. Like some of my friends, they would just go outside. They would be outside for like 5 minutes and they look like this bronze goddess. And I'm like, I can't achieve that. So it's unrealistic to think that I can keep doing that. And in turn, I damaged my skin behind it, right? Because I'm trying to fit into some weird beauty standard. So when you're looking at yourself and you're seeing yourself as less than, ask whose voice you're hearing. See, you think it's yours. It's not. You've adopted it. So now it sounds like you. Is it your mom? Is it your dad? Is it like, oh, you're going to wear that? Oh, that's not very flattering. Did I ask you if it's flattering? Now, if you ask somebody, does this look good on me? And don't do it out of validation. Just be like, hey, which shirt do you like better? I mean, that's fun. Do you like my hair this way or that way? That's not problematic. It's only problematic if you're like, if they say this without asking, well, then it is. But if you ask somebody an opinion and they go, I don't really think it's flattering on you, that's fine. Because how many times have you, honestly, keep it real, how many times have you gone to the store? If you're like me, you don't like to necessarily try on things. You get it home. It looked so good on the hanger. It was your size, everything. You get it on and it feels weird. It looks weird. You're like, ugh, I look frumpy. Like I don't really vibe with this. It's okay. Doesn't mean that you're ugly. It doesn't mean that you're fat. Doesn't mean any of those things. Now, you have these things called perpetual biases, and it's where you assume that you know what somebody thinks of how they are looking at you. So you usually take your insecurity, your low self-esteem, your insecurity of this, and you project that onto what you swear other people are looking at you. So like if you go into the store and you think, okay, they're looking at me and I'm in McDonald's and I'm getting a Big Mac and they're looking at me saying you're too fat for a Big Mac. No, that's your way of thinking. And you've projected that and perceived that other people are looking at you some kind of way. I have got to remind you, people largely really don't give a damn about what you're doing. They don't care about what you look like. They don't really care. Now you might have your parents or whatever, or somebody who comes in and they just want to have control over what you do and don't do, right? That's a whole different ballgame. It has nothing to do with you not being good enough. But if you've had negative experiences, like I said before with the bullying, you may think everybody sees that way. And that's where you got to be careful with that all or nothing thinking. Everybody thinks I'm fat. Everybody thinks I'm stupid. Everybody thinks I'm ugly. Stop with the everybody and nobody. I'll never have any date because I'm too fat. I'll never do this. Stop with the always and never. Shouldn't. Should. I mean, we use those words because, sometimes what else are you going to use? But just don't get married to the should and shouldn'ts. It's called not shoulding on yourself, right? And like I was saying to you before, it also becomes a coping strategy, right? To negate looking in the mirror and saying, okay, let me just appreciate it. Let me get some clothes that I feel is flattering for me and comfortable, and go have this conversation with my sister in person because we have to talk about something, and I don't really want to do it. And now you stand in the mirror, you try on 16 different outfits, and you're like, oh my God, I look terrible. I'm just not going to go. So now you almost use it as a coping strategy, and almost like in some weird ways, like an excuse to get out of things, an excuse not to put yourself in uncomfortable positions. You'll say, well, I'm just too big. Like I can't. Like, okay, well, what? Well, I don't know. I'm just not pretty enough. Based on what? Right? So literally ask yourself this question right now at 15 minutes and 14 seconds of this podcast. What is beautiful to you? No, don't say, well, no, I'm asking. In your mind, what is this beauty that you don't have? Oh, because you're a size 2. Okay, cool. Now what? Okay, so now are you going to feel good enough about yourself now? All of a sudden you lose all this magical weight that you swear is going to make you happy. Healthier? Yes. Or if you say, yes, I am what they classify as morbidly obese and my blood pressure is up, and yes, then yes, we are going to work on a strategy, but not because of you fitting into a pair of jeans. It's because of your health. So that's different. That's not body dysmorphia at all. That's just, okay, let's work on our health. But it's when you see yourself from a whole different perspective. And believe it or not, it does work the other way around. Yes, let's say you are considered morbidly obese. Sometimes you can look in the mirror and not see it until you see it in pictures. Like this is just because your mind lies to you so much in this world. Your mind is smart, but it's also at times very damaging, right? Because your mind just goes down these rabbit holes, and then you try to figure it out and you try to run from these thoughts, and you can't do that. But your mind is lying to you, right? Now that goes immediately into the next one, which is comparison. Stay off of comparing yourself to other people, whether it's they have more money or they have a nicer house or they're prettier or they're more active or they're doing them. Now, if you're pulling inspiration because you're like, wow, I really want to get in, let's say, shape, or I really want to work on growing, really keeping my hair trimmed. I want to make sure that I'm showering twice a day. You guys know I do that, right? It's like, I want you to make sure that you are looking at it out of inspiration. But if you're comparing yourself, especially now, oh my God, and you're comparing yourself to 90, let me not say 90, let's say 70% of the things that you see is often filtered. It's through a filter. They don't really look like that. People really do have cellulite. Yeah, they do. That's fake. Now, some people don't. But I've had cellulite since I was 12, 13 years old. And then I have friends who they've never had cellulite. It just is what it is. Am I going to sit there and go, well, why is this me? And oh my God. No, I'm not going to do that. I got my cellulite. So well, here I am. But you have to understand that when you're comparing yourself and looking at somebody as more attractive and somebody as this, again, if you're finding inspiration, then chef's kiss, love that. But if you're doing so and it's making you are allowing yourself to be made to feel bad, then don't follow it, right? Like I have so many clients who are just, some people are on OnlyFans, some people are models, some people are those things. And yeah, I look at them and I go, man, they're beautiful. I love this for them. They are really flourishing. I literally think that they're beautiful, and I'm not comparing. I'm not going, well, I wish my legs were skinnier. No, I might look and go, her legs are fit. I love this like strength look. It's called the athletic look. So I will look and go, okay, I want those legs because they look so good. Not I have to have them to look good. I love that because then I know I'm in athletic shape the way I want to be. Let me look and see what exercises that they're doing. So again, inspiration versus feeling bad. And again, if you have low self-esteem, it's going to be hard for you to not walk around the world comparing each other. or comparing yourself to other people, which is why you don't just always just jump right in and go, well, I'm going to work on my body. I'm going to work on how I see my body. Well, yeah, you are, but you also got to work on the anxiety, the expectations, the assumptions, the victim mentality. Like there's a lot that comes with this. This isn't a one-stop shop. Okay. And it's complex. We're going to talk about it here in a second. Obviously the social media exposure. I told you, I do not scroll socials. Do not sit there and scroll them. If you're doing it for educational in a good way, for entertainment, if it inspires you, great. But even then, don't stay on socials. Like just on and off, like just don't make it an all day thing. That's not healthy in general. But be mindful of what it is that you are subscribing to. Do not go down the doom scroll road. Do not try to figure out what somebody said. You should vote this way and this way. Oh my God, you have way more important things to talk about than that. Okay, so be careful of that. And then, of course, there's that stigma and isolation. And that is something that I see a lot of, right? Because then you're like almost reluctant to go out because you just don't feel like it. You don't feel like people looking at you. Yeah, well, the more you avoid it, the more you're going to become a hermit. Or you're worried about what is somebody going to think? Oh, okay. I see this a lot with hoarding disorder as well, right? Like when, like, oh my God, well, what is somebody going to think? Well, they're going to think that you are dealing with hoarding and that we're going to work on that. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not thinking anything else. If somebody else is, that's their problem. Okay. And you have to understand that isolating and avoiding can really exacerbate this condition in any way, shape, or form, not just BDD. Now, some people are just not aware. Like, I'm serious. Some people are just not aware. Some people are not aware. They don't realize that they even have that disorder. They might think that it's normal for them. They might avoid certain things. And they might be like, well, that's just me. Yeah, we're not going to do that. So some of that is just lack of awareness. Now let's talk about the complexities of it, because BDD is very complex, right? It's not just like, oh, bumped your head, got a headache, no problem. Like, nope. Because it presents in a very diverse way that sometimes are you just like, oh, do I like the green or do I like the blue eyeshadow on me? Well, that's not BDD. That's just, I don't know which one I like. Okay. But it can be very difficult, right? You can obsess over certain things. You might be like, oh, my nose is too big. And some people might be like, oh, my belly's too big, right? Is one worse than the other? No, it's just different. So it can be a little bit different, right? Now, I'm not saying like if you're like, okay, let's say your nose was some kind of way and you really wanted it fixed and you said, well, I'm going to get it done. I'm gonna get a nose job because I'm going to feel better. Okay. I mean, that's fine. But it's when you start saying, oh my God, I'm ugly because, oh my God, no, we're not going to do that. Okay. Because the diversity in presentation can make it very complex. And so that's why, because it may present out stronger one day and then not the next because your anxiety is in a different place, which is that co-occurring comorbidity or co-occurring disorder. Like we know that it is not attached. It goes with anxiety. It goes with depression. It goes with eating disorders. And sometimes you have to manage that in order to help this. See, people get so focused on let me treat the symptom that especially when you have things that co-occur together, right? It's like ADHD and anxiety that they can mimic each other in many different ways, which is why sometimes you are diagnosed out incorrectly, right? And so that's also something to keep in mind. So when you're having that, you have to realize that sometimes it isn't just about addressing your body as much as it is addressing the lack of self-esteem. I swear to you, so many things comes down to this. Your self-esteem and how you see yourself. Your self-esteem and how you see yourself. When you see yourself poorly, all of these other things start to come up. All of these other things start to creep up for you. Now, it can also be a chronic condition, right? Because now it becomes a habit. It becomes habitual, right? So it can be for a very long period of time. So when I had kind of the BDD first, it was always in my stomach, right? Even before I had kids, my stomach was never, sure, at 10, my stomach was flat. Yes, it was. But it was never flat. And after having kids and like the kids kind of blew out my abs some. So I have this like separation some. So there's always this little thing. And I work out because it's good for my mental health. And if that in turn gets me stronger and starts to minimize that, great. Would I have had a tummy tuck if it wasn't as much pain? Yes. Because well, let me not even say that. If it was that important to me, of course I would have. It wasn't that important to me because I was like, well, this is just part of who I am. Now I didn't go into it going, well, I'm going to love my body. Well, yeah, I got to love my body, but I better deal with this other stuff. I better deal with the idea that I don't have to be a size -4 in order to be hot. Like I better deal with that piece of it. And then the eating and the way I see myself, that piece of it is going to be better. So again, the coexisting conditions And then that chronic nature of where you're always just negative, negative, negative. So then we have to work on that cycle of not spotlighting all of this negativity, because then you're just constantly looking and looking and looking. Now, obviously, there's the cognitive disorders, like I said, that come along with that. And, you know, this is why that distorted belief system, that cognitive dissonance, that distorted belief that I am too blank, I am not too blank, I am not enough, I am too much, I am all of those things. But what it will do, it will also, your ego will come into play here. And you'll go, well, screw it, this is just how I am. Yes, you love who you are, but make sure that you're focused on your health. What is healthy for you? What is a healthy body composition for you? It's not going to be the same for everybody. What is the healthy way that you are living your life? Yeah. Do I love my sugar? Yeah. Am I going to have sugar? Mm-hmm. Will I have my wine? Yeah. Yeah, I will. Do I do it every day? No. But I enjoy it because for so long I didn't. For so long I was in such a prison with just eating certain things, tried every diet under the sun, because you're trying to fit into this narrative, right? So when you're having a cognitive distortion, you are seeing yourself through the eyes of a distorted mirror, right? So think of like the Funhouse. Oh my God, that made me sound like I was 100 years old. The Funhouse. Yes, there is such a thing as the Funhouse, but that was at the carnival, and it would be called the Funhouse, and it had all these mirrors in it. And then some mirrors would make you look super short and stumpy. Other mirrors would elongate you out. Some mirrors would make you look really like a pancake. And like, so it was a distorted mirror. And so, yeah, I mean, you're seeing yourself through a false lens, but you're seeing yourself through the lens of insecurity. You're seeing yourself through the lens of complaining, like somebody else complaining about you. You're perceiving yourself and seeing yourself through the lens of a whole distorted way of seeing things. So we know that that is the complex part too, right? Because you're going to see yourself in different aspects in different ways. Now, a lot of times you're going to avoid any social situations. You'll be avoiding social situations. You'll avoid mirrors. You'll avoid leaving your house. You're going to be too caught up in your perceived flaws. And it's going to have a very detrimental thing. You're like, well, I don't want to go out and deal with it, so I'll just stay in the house, because you're too concerned about what somebody's going to think of your external appearance. Well, how do you feel about your external appearance is the bigger question. And why are you trying to fit into some weird beauty standard that isn't even realistic? It's just not you're trying to achieve something that is unachievable because it's not the same for everybody else. So the more that you avoid something, it doesn't make it stop. It isolates you some. And that we do not want to do. Now, it will also, and I know this is like every teenager in high school, I swear, excessive grooming, where you're like, oh my God, I told you I did this. I need to have makeup every time I walk out of the house. Now, if I do put on makeup when I go out of the house, the first thing I do when I come back in is take that, we used to call it clown makeup, take that clown makeup off, because you can go into that excessive cosmetic disorder procedures, right? Listen, we all do not all of us, a lot of us do our little Botox and stuff like that because it's fun. I don't do it because I have to do it. I do it because I enjoy it. But and that's fine. Always do these things to enhance yourself. You want to get a breast augmentation? Go ahead. You want to get a tummy tuck? Go ahead. But it's when you're trying to fit into the Barbie standard or whatever this beauty standard is that you go above and beyond. I mean, there's been countless things. There's this one lady, they call her the cat lady, years ago in the 80s and 90s. Like, she literally had her way of like, she wanted to look like a cat. There's other people who go through all of these cosmetic procedures to look like Barbie or look like Kim Kardashian. And because they're trying to fit into that and say that that is a beauty standard. But I've seen Kim, we all have, if you ever watch the show, you see Kim and Khloe and Kourtney and all them without their makeup. And you're like, well, they're still really, really comfortably pretty. Like, comfortably meaning like they look comfortable in their skin, right? A lot of times, I mean, Kylie has a cosmetic company, so of course she's going to wear makeup. And I'm not saying that they don't feel insecure. Yeah, I'm sure they do, because they are scrutinized for everything. Oh my God, Kim's too fat. She's too skinny. Khloe's too fat. She's too skinny. What's wrong with this person's lips? They don't have lips. Like, you're never going to make people happy. So that part of that body dysphoria, that you need to really focus on is not allowing yourself to fall into this fictitious thing of the beauty standard. Go back to that 15-minute mark and ask yourself, what is beautiful to you, right? Obviously, you have the influence of social media. It's not all bad, but it's not definitely all good. Are you watching things that are promoting self-help and self-health, like working on yourself, maybe showing you what healthy relationship with food is while you're still enjoying some of the, like what people would call junk food, or, doing an exercise not to make you lose extra weight, but just to tone up, because this way you can have a stronger core. This way your back isn't going to bother you as much. So yeah, let's work on our core. Let me give you some great little ab exercises and core exercises. Core and abs are different things, but that piece of it, and do so in a healthy fashion. Not, oh my God, look at me, I can lose 20 pounds in a day. Like we're not going to do that. And this can have a severe relationship upon relationships. A severe one. It can strain relationships because you're always seeking that constant approval. Do you think I'm pretty enough? Oh God, does this make me look fat? Are you sure that you find me attractive? Like, oh my God, yes, like stop. So your BDD is creating this strain in relationships because you need self-esteem, of course, we know, needs this weird reassurance that you are enough, but then you don't even believe it when they say it anyway, right? And another piece of that, like I said, it's the awareness of it. Be aware that you have this and then say, why do I have this? I do this exercise with my clients, right? I'm going to give it to you right here. I want you to get naked in front of your mirror with with a little book that you can write how you feel. I don't care that you're uncomfortable with it. You got to expose yourself. No, nobody else has to be around you. But look at your eyes and go, okay, fine. You don't like your stomach this way. Your boobs are sagging. Oh, you don't like this. You have too much cellulite. You got this. Okay. Let's not pick it apart. Let's just sit there and get comfortable with seeing it. Right? You got to expose yourself because then you're just running from yourself. Then you're like, look at me. I love myself. Really? Can you stand naked in front of the mirror by yourself? I mean, then you're not there yet. I'm not saying that that's the cure all. You're not just going to go stand naked in front of the mirror and be like, oh my God, I love myself. Like, no, that's not going to happen. But it isn't just so fast. You got to say, when I see myself and I look at myself as ugly in the mirror, whose voice am I hearing? Am I listening to Instagram? Am I listening to my mother? Am I listening to the television? Am I listening to my friend down here who I think looks better in a bathing suit than me? Why are you doing that? That's a deeper rooted issue. So if you can't do it, let's address the issue in the mirror, right? Which is you in a good way. It's a deeper issue. Is it based in your anxiety? Is it based in your fear? Is it based in your depression? Is it based in your trauma? Is it based in the words that you keep hearing people saying fat, 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 or don't do this, don't do that. Oh my God. Are you trying to live up to some standard that doesn't exist because you in your mind think that this way of existing is real? And the answer to that question is, or the answer to that is, it's not real. Perfectionism is not real. It doesn't exist. It will never exist. Okay. And you have to be clear. So I would love for you to do a couple of things. What does beauty mean to you? What does beautiful mean to you? Number one. Why does it mean that? Why are you holding yourself to this standard that you think is why? Because Instagram said it? No, that's not going to be a good enough reason. Right. And then go stand naked in front of that mirror. Take your time, but don't take too much time. If you need to stand there and cry, then stand there and cry. Have your book there. Have your negative journal there. Have your negativity journal handy. Dump it in there. But until you can look at that person in the mirror and say, okay, well, what do you need? Let's move our body a little bit. Not just because you're going to lose weight, but because it's good for you. And your body deserves to move that energy. In turn, you know what? Next time you see yourself in the mirror, you might look a little different, and that is okay. But that should never be the go-to. It's very rarely inspiring. It usually comes with a whole lot of trauma. So that's sort of the wrap on BDD. Okay. It isn't abnormal if you have other disorders. And you want to work on that too. So let's jump over to Patreon real quick and we will continue on some other strategies and ways that it presents that you may not even know. But guys, you're beautiful exactly 100% the way you are. Check it out.